Welcome, weary traveler. You are just in time. Please join me for one last story. In olden times, when wishing still helped one, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful. But the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself, which had seen so much, was astonished. Close by the king's castle lay a great dark forest, and under an old lime tree in the forest was a well. And when the day was very warm, the king's child went out into the forest and sat down by the well. When she was bored, she took out a golden ball, threw it high up in the air, and caught it again. And this ball was her favorite plaything. Now, it so happened that on one occasion, the princess's ball did not fall into the little hand which she had been holding up for it, but on the ground beyond, and it rolled straight into the water. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes, but it vanished, and the well was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. At this she began to cry, and cried louder and louder, and could not be comforted. And as she sat there crying, someone said to her, "What ails you, king's daughter? Your tears would melt a heart of stone." She looked around and saw no one. She looked from where the voice came, but she only saw a frog stretching its thick, ugly head from the water.
"Old water splasher, is it you?"
said she.
"I'm weeping for my golden ball, which has fallen into the well."
"Be quiet, do not weep," answered the frog.
"I can help you, but what will you give me if I bring back your plaything?" "Whatever you will have, dear frog,"
said she.
"My clothes, my pearls, my jewels. I'll even give you the golden crown which I am wearing."
The frog answered,
"I do not care for your clothes, your pearls, or your jewelry, or even that golden crown. But if you will love me and let me be your companion and playmate, and sit by you at your little table, eat out of your little golden plate, and drink out of your little cup, sleep in your little bed. If you can promise me this, I will go down below and bring your golden ball up again." "Oh, yes,"
said she.
"I promise you all you wish, if you will but bring my golden ball back up."
When he had received his promise, put his head into the water and sank down, and in a short while came swimming back up with a ball in his mouth. He threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was delighted to see a little plaything once more. She picked it up and ran with it. "Wait, wait," said the frog. "Take me with you. I cannot run as fast as you can." But what did it avail him to scream his croak after her as loudly as he could? She did not listen to it, but ran home and soon forgot the poor frog, who was forced to go back into his well. The next day, when she had seated herself at the table with the king and all the courtiers, and was eating from a little golden plate, something came creeping, splash, splash, up the marble staircase. And when it had got to the top, it knocked at the door and cried, "Princess! Youngest princess, open the door for me!" She ran to see who was at the door, but when she opened it, there sat little frog. She then slammed the door in great haste, sat down to the dinner table, and was quite frightened. The king saw plainly that her heart was beating violently and and said, "My child, what are you afraid of? Is there perchance a giant outside who wants to carry you away?"
No,
replied she.
it is no giant, but a disgusting frog.
"And what does this frog want with you?"
Dear father, yesterday I was in the forest sitting by the well, playing. My golden ball fell into the water, and because I cried so, the frog brought it back up for me. And because he so insisted, I promised him he should be my companion. But I never thought he would be able to come out of his water. And now he's outside, and he wants to come in.
In the meantime, it knocked a second time and cried, "Princess! Youngest princess, open the door for me. Do you not know what you said to me yesterday by the cool waters of the fountain? Princess! Youngest princess, open the door for me." Then said the king, "That which you have promised, you must perform. Go and let him in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in and followed her, step by step, all the way to a chair. There he sat and cried,
Lift me up beside you.
She delayed until at last the king commanded her to do so. When the frog was once on the chair, he wanted to be on the table. And when he was on the table, he said,
Now, push your little golden plate nearer to me, so that we may share.
She did this, but it was easy to see that she did not do it willingly. At length he said,
I have eaten, and I am satisfied. Now I am tired. Carry me to your little room and make your little silken bed ready, and we will both lie down and go to sleep.
The king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, which she did not like to touch, and which was now to sleep in her pretty bed. But the king grew angry and said, "He who helped you when you were in trouble ought not be despised by you afterwards." She took hold of the frog with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. But when she was in bed, he crept to her side and said,
I am tired. I want to sleep as well as you. Lift me up, or I will tell your father.
Then she was terribly angry. She took him up and threw him with all her might against the wall.
Now, you will be quiet, odious frog,
said she. But when he fell down, he was no frog, but a king's son, with beautiful, kind eyes. And it came to pass that with her father's consent, he became her dear companion and husband. He told her how he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, and how no one could have delivered him from the well but herself. The next morning, when the sun awoke them, a carriage came driving down with 8 white horses, and were harnessed with golden chains. And behind stood the young king's servant, Faithful Henry. Now Faithful Henry had been so unhappy when his master was changed into a frog, that he had caused 3 iron bands to be laid around his heart, lest it should burst with grief and sadness. The carriage was to conduct the young king into his kingdom, and when they had driven a part of the way, the king's son heard a cracking behind him, as if something had broken. So he turned around and cried, "Henry, the carriage is breaking." "No, master, it is not the carriage. It is a band from my heart, which was put there in my great pain when you were a frog and imprisoned in a well." And once again, while they were on their way, something cracked. And each time the king's son thought the carriage was breaking, but it was only the bands, which were springing from the heart of Faithful Henry, because his master was free and happy.